Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 14th episode of Psych Talks with Psychologist, and I'm your host, Ms. Basha, Director at ICHA's Institute of Clinical Hypnosis and Related Sciences. Today we have with us Kirti Bakshi, and she's a psychologist, and she's going to talk about metaphors. So before we go ahead, anybody who has any kind of questions with respect to metaphors, they can surely put it in the comment section, and we'll answer them for sure. And you can also start a watch party so that your friends and family can benefit out of the session. And a brief about Kirti. She is a psychotherapist, a coach, and a trainer with a passion of integrating psychology and spirituality in the field of behavior transformation. Her education in psychology and spirituality spans over 20 years. In addition to the education, Kirti also has gained a vast knowledge in other applications of psychospiritual therapies. To name a few modalities, clinical hypnotherapy, pioneered metaphor therapy, family and systemic constellations, educational psychology, master practitioner and coach in NLP, train the trainer, city and guild, certified by play therapist. This is the introduction for Kirti, and we very well welcome Kirti on our Psych Talks with Psychologists. So we welcome you, Kirti. And yes, going ahead, Kirti, a small introduction from your end, and then we can move ahead to our question and answers.
Sure. So thank you, Miska, for this wonderful introduction. So I'm glad to be here, and I've seen some of you people's previous work, and I think you all are doing great work at ICHR. And thank you so
Thank
much for having me over. And
you.
so about myself, I'm basically somebody who loves psychology, and more than classical psychology, I love applied psychology. I love the applications of psychology. So that's why studying all these holistic therapies has been my mainstay for all these years, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my journey. And while I was studying and I was kind of learning, I stumbled upon the world of metaphors, and yeah, and it just kind of caught me, and the kind of effect that I got using metaphors in psychotherapy blew me away. And I framed a course on metaphor therapy, which I conduct around the year, and I use it in my clinical experiences, in my clinical work. And I just think that it's like a huge world of metaphors. It's amazing, it's mesmerizing, it's surprising. So that's what I
Lovely.
do. Apart from that, I do a lot of other work, which one can look up later. But yeah, my main work is metaphors, and I just love metaphors.
Uh, Katie, tell us about application of metaphors in a therapeutic work.
So, in therapeutic work or non therapeutic work, what is
Okay.
a metaphor? If we go to look at the classical definition of metaphor, metaphor is the indirect comparison. That's how in English language it is said to be. So also the mind. If we say that electricity is measured in certain units, or water is measured in liters, then the mind measures experiences in forms of images. These images, which are a part of our subconscious mind, are expressed through bypassing the conscious mind in projective ways. And that projection is called as a metaphor. So whatever I want to express, I want to express it in the form of a indirect expression. So instead of exactly like you cannot express feelings without the use of metaphors. For example, people who say I'm feeling pressurized, so the pressure, the whole pressure is a metaphor. There is no other
Okay.
way that they can describe that feeling. So it's got a vast application. Got a vast application.
Okay. I think that's quite a nice introduction to what metaphor is all about. And as a psychologist, how important is it for other psychologists to learn metaphors in their practice?
So it's like, every psychologist has a preferred way of working and a niche
Hmm.
style. So
Right.
you have to learn different tools and techniques. Your approach
Hmm.
has got to be very eclectic. And, there can be
Hmm.
clients who come, they sit down in the chair, and they're just using metaphor after metaphor. So it's one of
Hmm.
the techniques. I wouldn't say metaphor encompasses the entire world of psychotherapy, but it's a must know technique. It's a must know inside, because your client is expressing themselves in this language. So if
Mm.
you are adept or if you are deft and trained very well into the use of metaphors, you can just pick up that metaphor and develop an entire therapy around it. So it's a must know technique. According to me, apart from all the other techniques that we know, this is a very good add on. It's a very good add
Okay, excellent. Um, Kriti, we'll quickly say hi to everybody who's joined us on Facebook Live. You can say hi from there and they're going to hear you out.
on. Hello, everyone.
So, hi,
Hello, everyone.
everybody.
Glad to see you
Hi,
all here.
Kumud and Gayatri, Sanjana. And we're expecting few more people to come in, few more people
Sure.
to have questions. So my next question would be, Kirti, how would a psychologist use metaphor in their practice? So can you share it with an example that would make it really easy for all of us to understand it?
Sure. So, when your client is talking to you, they are using words which are very pictorial in nature, which are showing you pictures, and those are called as metaphors. So, if your client is saying something like, I can give you an example of a client who says, my life is going round and round like a cycle, and I want this cycle to end. Now, my option was there to ask about her life or ask about the cycle. So, being a metaphor therapist, I picked up the word cycle. Yeah. And I asked her to
Mm,
describe the cycle more and more. And then my 45 minutes of therapy revolved around that cycle. That word cycle took me to the core and the crux of a problem in no time. Had I picked up
mm,
life, tell me more about your life, I would have gone all over. The narrative that the client gave me would have been way more longer, and I would have still not come to the core. So, using a
mm.
metaphor, coming to the core or the crux is very, very easy. So,
I
it's that effective.
I think that's a wonderful way of putting it across, Kirti. I'm sure it helps us to get a clear picture of what metaphor is. Uh,
Right.
as a psychologist, Kirti, do you think there are limitations? Or before limitations, I think I'll ask you, what are the different kind of metaphor a psychologist can use? And if you could share an example of or a case study from your practice.
So, there are different types of metaphor. There are metaphors of control, there are metaphors of regression, there are metaphors of progression, there are metaphors which are called as endomorphic metaphors, where you are using stories and you are using narratives which are similar to the client. There are isomorphic metaphors. There are different types of metaphors. It's a huge, vast world. Depending on
Mhm.
where your client is, you will pick up what metaphor, or depending on what they have kind of narrated to you, you will pick up their metaphor by itself and develop it. So, you wanted me to tell you a case study, right?
Yeah, if you can just touch briefly upon each of them, that would also help, as in for people to understand different kinds. And then we
So,
can
the
have an
metaphors,
example of one or two.
great. So, the metaphors of, let's say, the metaphors of progression. A client comes to you asking that, I want to know that, like, for example, a client came to me and she asked me that, I had, my husband passed away and I married my brother-in-law, and now I'm not getting along and I'm going to go in for a divorce, but I'm very scared of being depressed because when my husband passed away, I went through a whole phase of depression. I want you to tell me that if I go through this particular divorce, will I get depressed? How would I know that? And it's just something you cannot predict because you can't play the prediction psychologist, right? So I
Right.
told her, I said, all right. So I put her on a progressive metaphor. I put her on a journey. I gave her options and I made her progress and I made her progress. And that actually, when you're going deeper into a journey, the more forward you go into the journey, the deeper you're going into your subconscious, right? And it
Right.
revealed to me that, during her course of journey, that it revealed to me that she sees herself extremely happy, overjoyed, and looking for partners and finding a partner with a baby. And so all that gave me the whole visualization that she actually zeroed down to and the progression that she went into gave me an idea that she looks like she'll be able to cope up very well. So I
Mm-hmm.
told her, I said, I think you have the internal spirit and the strength, and you will be looking for options. And I think you should be able to cope up with this one. It won't be a great challenge from what I understand of your metaphors or your visualization. And then I mapped that case. I generally map some of my cases. So I mapped that
Mm-hmm.
case, and surprisingly, a year later, she came back and she did tell me that something very similar to what she had seen in the therapy actually happened. She actually went online, she actually looked out for other partners, and she actually did find somebody. While
Oh.
when she was talking to me, it must be a part of her mind, but it played out in her visualization. So it was a
Okay.
very beautiful way of, this is called as a progressive metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
So, which gives you an insight into how the client foresees their future at a subconscious level. So, this was one such example.
Mm-hmm. And if you could just put some light on other different, different types, what are they? Uh, that would really help because we are going to talk in the entire session about metaphors. So if we get
Right,
an idea about different types, that would be great. And later on, we can take up the application and questions from other people.
right. So, there are isomorphic metaphors. Isomorphic metaphors are the metaphors where, you are always trying to tell people about a similar narrative which has all the elements of their conflict in their life. For example, if you're talking of perspectives, or you're talking of judgments, or you're talking of shifting the client's perspective, you will pick up a story which is very similar to the client but has a different perspective, and through that isomorphic story, you're shifting their perspective. So that's one way of doing it. You can have a rich bank of scripts and stories with you, anecdotes
Mm-hmm.
with you, which are metaphoric in nature, and that's called as isomorphism in metaphor. So you will pick that up. Metaphors of control can be anything to do with, people using machines as expressions. Like, I feel the churning, for example, they will go, I feel the churning happening. So what's churning? It's like a machine that's churning. And where do you feel the churning? And, when did the churning start? And how did this happen? So identification of the primary metaphor, processing the
Mm-hmm.
metaphor, developing the
Mm-hmm.
metaphor, working with the metaphor, and maturing changes. These are the steps that are involved. But metaphor is something which calls for an acute sharpness on the side of the therapist,
Mm-hmm.
because we are very conditioned to allow the client to just go on and on because we feel that's cathartic. That's happening. But being a metaphor therapist, the moment you spot a metaphor, you will make a note of it very quickly. And then the whole process of applying the steps of metaphorical dialogue will happen. So, a metaphor therapist, if the choice is given between uh, believing what they see and believing what they hear, they'll believe what they see. Okay.
Right.
So what you hear is a story. What you see is the pictures embedded within the story. So you will actually be questioning the pictures embedded within the story because they are
Right.
metaphors, and you will develop those. So it's a slightly different kind of an orientation, or a slightly different kind of an approach, whereby we may have to little bit realign to our listening style. We may have to ask questions which are slightly different, but that is isomorphism in metaphors. You can also have metaphors which are of letting go metaphors, metaphors of release, for example. So you will, if for example, there's a client who is very entangled, it's called as a diffusion state in the frontal cortex. The client is very diffused in their thought processes, and you want them to actually watch themselves away from the thought. So metaphorically, you will give them a projection surface to project their thoughts onto that surface and watch them. So one of the favorite things that I do very often is that you're sitting on a riverside and you're relaxing. And as you're relaxing, you're watching the river flow by. And as the river is flowing by, you can see big leaves from the trees dropping into the water, and just, going with the gentle flow of the river. And imagine that, on each one of these leaves, you can see all the thoughts that are there in your mind. Either they are written on that or the pictures of those thoughts are there on that leaf. So one leaf goes, you can watch it go. Now the second is going, now the third is going. And slowly you're becoming so good at doing this that you're achieving a great skill in being able to put each one of your thought on the leaf and watch it go and watch it go. And I keep the client in a, kind of a trance state for some time, and I allow them to watch their thoughts go. By this, what I have done, I have created a distance between the diffused mind, and I put the client on the observer mode, and the thought becomes a distant entity. So all the confusion, diffusion, which gives rise to anxiety, actually goes away, and they do start feeling a bit better. They develop objectivity, which will help us in giving them solutions or creating solutions, helping them create their solutions for themselves.
Yeah, I think very well put across how you can use the different kind of metaphors, Kirti. Let's
Yeah,
check if we have any questions from our audience. Um, so right now we are just waiting for the question, but I'll go ahead with the question that I have. Um,
yeah.
so can you share, some more examples with respect to very vividly and use of metaphor that you have done with your clients?
Okay, so one of my heartbreaking cases was a lady who
Mm-hmm.
had migraine for 20 years.
Wow.
And it was so disabling to her that she had to give up her corporate career and sit back home. And then she
Okay.
came for an appointment, and the doctors did tell her it's psychosomatic. She went through all her sleep tests and everything possible. And then finally, the doctors did tell her that, it could be having a psychological basis. And she came and she sat in the chair. And as soon as she sat in the chair, she says, Kitty, get me out of this hammering headache. Yeah. So the hammer,
Mhm.
that came across like a metaphor. I just focused on that one word hammer. Okay. And I asked her to describe it in great detail. I took her through the 4-step therapeutic process. And eventually that took her back to her ex-husband's house where she had a grouse against him and she wanted to so much take revenge from him. She sees herself doing that and she comes back to the awakening of the room and she goes back home. And the next week she reports feeling 50% better with just that 20 minutes dialogue, you know.
Wow.
It can be that effective, it can be that powerful, the metaphors,
Absolutely.
if they are used. So it's a little bit of a skill, developing metaphorical conversation is a bit of a skill which one has to chisel and sharpen your brain because, there
Mhm.
is not one moment where a therapist can take a backseat in a metaphor therapy session because you got to be really alert. You got to be really
Mhm.
alert to pick up the metaphor. While in a
Right.
narrative kind of a therapy, when we think that the client is actually going through catharsis, we can take a little bit of a mental backseat and allow them
Mhm.
to flow. Of course, attention is the foremost ingredient of all therapies. But for a
Mhm.
metaphor therapist, you got to be super attentive. So this was
Okay.
one heartbreaking case that I can share with you.
Right.
Apart from this, there's a lot of other cases we have worked with.
Okay. So, i- is there in this practice of yours of so long, there are any kind of challenges you faced while doing or working with metaphor therapy, which the
Yeah,
your co-facilitators can know, or I mean, coach mental health professionals can know, so they can take care of it if they're planning to integrate metaphor or they are already practicing metaphor. So, if you could share
So
something
the
on that.
major challenge is sometimes the client is uh, not exposed so well to a visualization, because we are
Mm-hmm.
primarily a country which focuses on conversations and not so much on visualization. As you will
Right.
understand that even through our system of past education, the current education, however, is great, but the
Mm-hmm.
past education did not stimulate the right brain so much. So most
Right.
of the people, like, who come to us who are in their 50s belong to that system of education. So their visualization skills are not that great.
Mm-hmm.
So then if you are trying to help them see a metaphor, they find it slightly difficult. They find seeing spiritual metaphors very easy because they are so oriented into
Okay.
spiritual
Yeah.
therapy that
Right.
getting them to do a spiritual metaphors, like whatever we do, all the kind of spiritual work, when we are calling in angels, we are calling in fairies, we are calling in monsters, that's all space metaphors, right? So there are metaphors coming
Right.
out of this space, and it's like a nice toolbox that a therapist has, that bring up
Mm-hmm.
anything from this space and give the client hope, or give the client certain higher authority or a higher self, or whatever that is called as a space metaphor. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we get clients who are just not there in that visualization capacity. That is the time you got to take them through a bit of a visualization exercise first, to make them enable to see images which are already
Mm-hmm.
there. People who are psychotic, of course, metaphor doesn't work with them because they are all over the place and are quite scattered.
Yes.
So, for any kind of clinical illnesses that, where there's a disoriented state of mind, like any other therapy, metaphors is not a therapy of choice over there. We need the
Right.
client to be really, really in a state where cognitive work is possible. It works
Right.
very well with the younger generation. That's my experience. The younger generation is way more creative. Their visualization capacities are way more stimulated. So working with the younger generation of today, which is like 40s, still 40s, I think
Mm-hmm.
they make great clients, in terms of
Right.
metaphors. So the youth and the adolescents, they work
Mm-hmm.
fantastically well. And children, they take to metaphors like stories. So they take.
Okay.
And the limitation is only with clients who are not very right brain stimulated. You got to
Mhm.
really first take them through a visualization session.
Okay. Okay. I think that's very well put across, Kirti. Kirti, we do have questions, and I'm going to read out one by one. So there's a question from Shilpi, and she's asked, can you share metaphors that we can use with low self-esteem and panic disorders? That's the first question. And the second
Hmm.
question is, would it be possible for her to demonstrate on me? Okay. And would it be possible for you to give your thoughts on that? Okay, let's try, Shilpi. Let's see how we go about. So, Kirti, first of all, if you can share what kind of metaphors you can use with low self-esteem and panic disorders, I think that's what she's asking.
Right. So with low self-esteem, we will ask the client to describe their state, and while describing their state, they will give you a metaphor, or
Mm-hmm.
alternatively, you ask them what does low look like. The low by
Mm-hmm.
itself is a metaphor, right? And you ask
Mm-hmm.
them what does the low look like, or a picture of a low, and then develop it, and then work with it. So we don't know what client kind of metaphor a client will come up with. We generally work
Mm-hmm.
with client generated metaphors.
Kind
So as
generated.
such,
Yes.
yeah, so we'll have to wait for the client to generate a metaphor and come up with that. For a panic disorder, there is all jumbling up of thoughts, and the client is racing, right? The thoughts
Mm-hmm.
are racing. So
Right.
and slowing down, and like what I told you about the leaf exercise, is something which
Yes.
we will create a distance between the client and the thought, and we will diffuse the completely fused state, and we will take it one after the other. We put them on an observer mode using a metaphor. And the leaf exercises I told you I use very often. Apart from that,
Right.
we use many other metaphorical exercises even for panic attacks, and we train the client into doing that. So there is one exercise which is very good one, is the pendulum, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you ask the client to imagine a pendulum, and you make them watch the pendulum and tell them that the more you want to hold it, the more it goes into the opposite direction. You don't want it to go one side, but the more you try to hold it on that side, it goes to the opposite side with greater intensity. So your thoughts are
Mm-hmm.
also like that. The more you want to hold them, the more you want to control them, the more faster they run. Instead of that, Let's climb up to the point of contact where the thread is actually in your hand. Okay, that
Mm-hmm.
point of contact, there is zero movement. And that
Right.
point of contact, you can see the whole flow of the pendulum, but you aren't moving. You aren't
Mm-hmm.
involved. That point of contact is stillness, right? So, how
Yes.
about trying to be on that point of contact? Now,
Mm.
can you feel yourself there? Can you feel that you are on that point of contact? And remember that point of contact isn't moving. It's firm, it's still, it's moving it's watching the pendulum, but it's not by itself moving. Do you feel that
Yes.
stillness? The moment they feel that stillness, you got to tell them, all right, this is every time you have racing thoughts, this is what you got to do. You got to go watch the pendulum, watch how fast it's pacing, and then slowly climb up the thread to the point of stillness. And the moment you reach there, you're still watching it go, but you are watching the pendulum move. You are still. So, what have I done? I've created layers.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes.
know, I've created a still layer, observing a moving layer. So,
Yes.
that's one thing that I do for panic attacks very often.
Okay. I'm sure that Shilpi answers your question. And with respect to demonstration, later on, if we have if the time permits, we will definitely look into taking up a demonstration if that's how we want to go about it. So there's one more question, Kirti from Gayatri. And how can metaphor therapy help with schizophrenic patients as they have hallucination?
It can't. That I have already said.
Yeah,
That
you've
with a
already said
disoriented,
that.
yeah, with a disoriented state of mind, in fact, no form of therapy is going to work except for supportive therapy, where we are going to
Right.
do something called as the compliance therapy. We are
Okay.
going to encourage them to go back to the medicine. We are going to become the bridge between the psychiatrist and the client and you. So, one of the things that I do very regularly is when a client with schizophrenia history comes to me, I look at what their current symptoms are. I make a note of those symptoms. I send them back to the psychiatrist with those changes. The psychiatrist is mapping what was there earlier, what is there now, adjust the dose accordingly. And when the client comes on a maintenance dose, that's the
Hmm.
time we able to work with them. But otherwise, the metaphors does not work with schizophrenia like many other forms of therapy.
Absolutely true. Um, I think that would answer her query. Shilpi has one more question, that how different is it from visualize imaginary skills? So how different is metaphor from visualize imaginary skills? And another question is that is it possible that the client does not use or give images any visuals? One second. I think that's a little. So let's take up one question one by one. How is
Yeah.
the meta therapy different from visual imaginary skills?
So everything into subconscious modality, be it hypnosis, be it NLP, be
Mm.
it any kind of therapy, we are going to use guided imagery and visualization. That's
Okay.
that's the that's the mainstay of subconscious work, right? So
Right.
even under hypnosis, what are we doing? We are asking creative visualization. We are doing
Yes.
guided imagery. That's the main
Mhm.
backbone of the entire work, right? But which
Mm.
one to use at what time? You know, what kind of
Mhm.
a guided imagery or what kind of a visualization are we going to take? And what is your client visualizing right now? You know, there are
Mhm.
times that you have a script and you make your client visualize that. In metaphor therapy, you create on the spot script depending on the metaphor presented to you by the client.
Yes.
So there's a fair amount of spontaneity in that work, because you
Right.
know you may have 10 scripts and your client can have the 11th problem, right? And your
Absolutely
script
true.
does not, yeah, your script doesn't take care of any of that. Now the client has come to you with a very unique set of problems. Now you got to be able to weave that in, come up spontaneously with a script. Sometimes maybe guided imagery, sometimes maybe visualization, sometimes maybe just progression of the same image. and developing it.
Mhm.
So it's different in the sense it's more versatile, it's more client centered, and it's more spontaneous.
Absolutely. So yes, I think Shilpi, that answers your question. Kriti, they've also asked if what are the kind of books that you would recommend for metaphor-therapy, if you can share few books.
I wouldn't know the name, but if you Google out, there are a couple of books which are very, I think some by Kopp, Kopp. There's a book on metaphor-therapy by Kopp, which is very good. Then
Uh-huh.
there are some other good books also on
Mm-hmm.
metaphors, but they are on verbal metaphors. Now, the verb metaphor is broadly divided into three types. The
Okay.
visual metaphor, which is the drawing analysis and the color psychology part of it, where the client through their drawing is presenting everything. Then you have the
Right.
verbal metaphor. So on verbal metaphor, there is a lot of literature written. Then you have the
Okay.
imaginary metaphor, where you get the client to imagine and progress them forward. So the
Okay.
imaginary metaphor, there's not much of material published, and the drawing metaphor, the visual metaphor, there's not much of material published, which we teach them in our workshop. And the verbal metaphor, yes, there is material published. So you can look up on latest research findings on metaphor, and there is enough material to go by.
Sure. I think that answers your question also. Shilpi, there's one more question I've asked by Abha, and she asked that borderline personality disorder persons explore a variety of metaphors. How to start with mood swings effectively?
How to start with mood swings. So,
Yes.
as I told you, the pendulum is a very classic example of mood swings, right? The way the
Okay.
pendulum swings and it goes from one mood to the other. We bring them back to the center. And that's a very good way of doing it. And then there are plenty of others. And depending also on whether your client is presenting you with metaphor. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have customized ready scripts for everything because I'm creating my scripts on the spot. The client is presenting you a metaphor. Like I had this borderline client, personality client with me, and who came and said that, I feel like I'm going to put my a syringe in my um, vein, and I'm going to let the blood drain by on the other side of the basin. And then she called up her father and she said, I'm doing this. Now these are typical borderline personalities who like to create this exaggerated dramatic situation by way of getting attention. So I was
Mm-hmm.
working with her, and she came up and she said that, when I was just talking to her, she's saying, you know what, Keerti, there's so much bottling that I can't even tell you that this bottle can explode anytime, It can either explode and go and explode on my father's head, or it can explode anywhere. So I started working with the bottle. I'm like, okay, let's talk of this bottle and let's right now
Mm-hmm.
gently open the cork, and let's bring out the first thing that comes out of the bottle. What do you think is coming out? And we
Mm-hmm.
started working on that. So I gave her a space to express herself, you know and she slowly started opening up. She slowly started talking. She slowly started talking, and it gave her a space. It gave her an expression space. And then finally the bottle became my metaphor for the next 3 sessions of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So so that's how, we can't say which metaphor I'm going to use for what. A great metaphor is tree, which is all time applicable.
Okay.
you know the metaphor of
Oh,
a tree is hugely applicable to many diverse situations. Whereas you talk
right.
to a client, you tell them that, there's a tree, and you're imagining the roots of the tree, and tell me what's happening. So specifically for people who are refusing to grow and nurture themselves and take love and receive love, I very often take them the metaphor of a root, that there is a tree, and it's growing and the roots are going deeper. But at some point of time, the roots are not taking in the nurturing from the soil. So why do you think that really happened? So they'll say the roots got infected, and so what happens now? Now what needs to happen? What infected the root? And once we develop the metaphor well enough, we pin it to their life. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
particular point which we pin the metaphor. When a metaphor is well developed, then we ask them, all right, so this tree and this root, which is so blossoming so well and has suddenly stopped receiving And what do you think is the outcome that will happen to this tree eventually
Mhm.
if this issue is not addressed, of the roots? And then we make
Mhm.
them progress and we make them see the consequential outcome. Now we tell them that what needs to happen for this tree to start receiving the nourishment back or to start receiving back the nutrition from the soil. And then they start telling us in technical ways. Then I ask them, how is this situation similar to your life? That's the spinning end of it. So I
Okay.
spin it to the life. And then, in exactly the same sequence, they tell you everything about their life. But now they've already got the wisdom that if they didn't take care of this, this is what can happen. So that's
Right.
developing the metaphor, and that's processing it, and that's dealing with it.
Very well. Kirti, I think there's somebody who's asked. So she's a practicing a psychotherapist specialized in
Yeah.
CBT, and she's saying that if she has to learn metaphor course, then Kirti is there. She
Yeah.
does.
So I have a course which is coming up now on the 12th and 13th of June, and she can contact me and we'll give her the details of the course.
Okay. So also another question, Kirti, is that you said that you make metaphors or you work with metaphors on the spot while the clients give you the metaphors. So what is the kind of base that you would keep in mind or information or principles, for example, to while working with metaphors, while when the clients give you those metaphors?
So the
Because अगर
logic, the
वो
idea is,
yeah.
yeah, sorry, go on.
नो नो आई वाज जस्ट आस्किंग दैट कि आप बेस क्या रखते हो सो दैट कि अगर मुझे स्पॉन्टेनियस है तो दैट मोमेंट व्हाट ऑल थिंग्स आई नीड टू कीप इन माइंड व्हाइल वर्किंग विद दैट मेटाफोर
Sure. So the idea is to stay within the logic of the method.
ओके
So if it's a tree, my logic will expand itself to soil, to the root, to the tree, to the foliage of the tree, to the sunlight, to the air, to the wind. I will stay within the logic of the metaphor. Even if my client tries to go away from it, I'll gently bring them back to the logic of the metaphor. So the more you can stay within the paradigm of the logic of the metaphor, you are mostly dealing with the issue on hand. The moment your client strays, that means it's becoming too much for them to deal with this issue. So they will develop a secondary metaphor out of it. Your choice is if the secondary metaphor is helping you understand the primary metaphor, you go for it. Otherwise, I would like to stay with the logic of the primary metaphor.
Okay, very well. Kirti, there's one more question from Neeta. What metaphors can be used with person who blames others for all their problems, who think that they are victims and have a lot of self pity?
Metaphors of reflection work here, you know. So
So,
you need
give
to
a brief.
use yeah. So a metaphor of reflection is where the client make the client look into their own image, or you make them look into a part of themselves which they have not addressed till now, and then ask questions to the self. So we do this very often, like, we have used mirrors, for example, as metaphors of reflection. So we
Mhm.
do a certain distancing, we do a little bit of cognitive diffusion, we take them a little dissociation, and then we ask them to look into their own state of consciousness and talk to themselves. So there's a way in which you dissociate the client from the current confused state, take them a little further away, and then ask them to look into a reflective side. Metaphors of reflection do a great job. Sometimes this also could be because of trauma, the constant blame that keeps coming up. Also sometimes the root cause is a trauma which is live and living, you know.
Okay.
So we need to actually look into it, whether this client is blaming just because they don't want to take ownership, or they're blaming because they're really hurting inside and the trauma has really got deep rooted seeds inside them. So we may need to work on the trauma. Then we work on the trauma release part.
Okay. I think that's the fair process first to work with trauma and then to go back with working with a responsibility.
Self-reflect.
Uh,
Yeah.
Great. Kitty, do you think there are any kind of limitations that, before limitations, again, I'm going to come back to. Say, for example, there are different kind of practitioners in psychology who specialize, like we said earlier, that they have a niche or a way of practicing, or they are a CBT practitioner or an REBT practitioner or etc. maybe hypnosis, NLP, or other modalities. So how can they integrate metaphors with their current set of work?
Oh, it's highly integratable.
Mm.
It's actually, we may be doing it also. Once you
Oh.
learn metaphor therapy, you
Mm.
realize that you've actually been doing it. You've been
Mm.
doing it, but you've been doing it more with a hunch, and you haven't been doing it more, with in an organized way. So just like most of our work that we do, we have to understand that a lot of learning is about validation of, oh, I've done this before.
Mm.
Lot of our learning, comes from the fact that, oh, I think I was going right. I mean, intuitively, I was doing the same thing. I didn't know this process is called this, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes the use of metaphors or use of even a CBT technique, or sometimes we use all of that, and this is something called as intuitive counseling, right? So there are
Mhm.
many people who come from non psychology field, but they've
Yeah.
intuitively got the process right. They've got the flow right. They come to
Mm.
our workshops to validate whether all that they were instinctively doing was right or wrong. So similarly with
Right.
metaphor, when you learn the art of it, you realize you've been doing it. And in many forms of therapy, it's highly integrated, very,
Okay.
very integrated.
No, I think that also makes it easier to understand that how you can go about using it with your set of work, or you might be actually practicing it without being structurally
Aware of it.
aware about it. Yes. So, Viti, now I'm coming back to the limitation part. If there is any kind of limitations metaphor has, if you have any experience to share,
Just a moment, huh? Just give me a moment.
no problem. So, yes, how is
Yeah.
everybody else
What are you
doing?
asking? Misbah, can you repeat your question?
Definitely. I will repeat the question. My question was any kind of limitations that you have come across while practicing metaphor for a longest time. So, if you could share those limitations with our viewers, or
Uh, So the limitation sometimes that I've come across is stretching the therapy time to client expectations. Like, metaphors work really quick,
mm,
right? And your client is expecting you to give them an hour and a half of listening and listening and listening. And they
right,
think that listening, that 1 hour of therapist time needs to be stretched into 1.5 hours. That little client awareness about, okay, can I talk a little more? Can I talk a little more? But in a metaphor therapy, classically, you don't have that much space, you know. So I normally, what I do is I let them release cathartically release the first half an hour, 40 minutes. I'm taking notes on their metaphors, and then I bring in the actually therapeutic conversation towards the end. So it's a rather quick therapy, and the client may not believe that it'll work. So because their consciousness has bought 1.5 hours, and they are going to only allow that process to work. So that
mm,
is a bit of a limitation
yeah,
sometimes I
they
find.
have a kind of set possibly belief in mind कि यार एक डेढ़ घंटा तो मुझे बिठा के बात करना चाहिए.
Exactly, exactly. That's very conditioning that the client comes
Yes,
with.
that's quite conditioning. Possibly. Yes, let me check if we have any other questions before we move forward. Um, so, Kirti, as in your practice, what are the most kind of cases or most important cases? I'm not getting the right word. जहाँ पे metaphor use करोगे तो you have a short result. You know that कि इस पे सीधा metaphor ही use कर लो. Those kind
Huh.
of cases.
Uh, so children,
Okay,
adolescents,
okay,
corporate, I directly go for a metaphor approach.
okay, okay.
It just gives you good result. And I tell you, corporates just love it. The
Okay.
people coming from the corporate world, they
Hmm.
simply love it because they're a little reluctant for hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
They are a little reluctant for a CBT homework. That commitment doesn't come. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
CBT is a wonderful tool, but it definitely requires following up from the part of the client.
Yes.
CBT requires so much commitment from the client to do their homework well, you know. But
Mhm.
but people today either are not committed or don't have the time, or they don't report back into therapy if they have not done their work. So they kind of
Yeah.
drop off, you know. So
Mm.
that's why what I think is working with the corporate people who really are having little time, they might come to us for one or two sessions, either financial restraints, time restraints, traveling restraints, and everything. We need to be productive in a short span of time. That's where I use metaphor, and I've got great results.
Okay. I think that's fair. But don't you think, Kirti, that using a little bit of psychotherapy before starting a session would help to client to understand how the any modality for that matter works? You know.
Of course. That, as I told you, 35, 40 minutes is where I spend doing that.
Yeah.
You know, we are using a lot of listening, we are using a lot of empathy, we are using a lot of reframing, we are using a lot of mirroring, we are using a lot
Mhm.
of pacing, we are using all of that in the first
Yes.
40 minutes. But what is
Mm.
your closure technique varies from therapist to
Mm.
therapist. Like after 40 minutes of listening, you may close your session with a hypnotherapy, you may
Mm.
close your session with the Reiki. You may close your session with the NLP technique. You may close your session with the metaphor.
Right.
You know,
That.
so most of the questioning techniques that we follow
Mm-hmm.
actually are cathartic. Now it requires that you are doing a diagnostic. Now you are doing a processing, and now you are doing a closure, right? So what are your
Mm-hmm.
closure techniques? Hypnotherapy largely closure technique, and then can go into diagnostic. NLP largely diagnostic, come closure technique, but that also happens in 15-20 minutes. A good hypnotherapy session is 20 minutes. A good
Mm-hmm.
NLP session is maybe even lesser than that, you know. But the
Right.
40 minutes, what we are doing, we are doing rapport building, we are doing empathy, we are doing narratives, we are doing catharsis, we're doing all of that. So it's not very different.
Right. So, I would like to ask that any outside your practice, do you use metaphors in your life, and how has
In
those
day-to-day
metaphors?
life, now I've kind of become very attuned to picking them up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like something which comes very automatically to you. And the moment people say it, you kind of pick it up, but then you rest the therapist in you, and you tell your mind to just shut up for a while and just not be a therapist. But yeah, you develop that little bit of attentiveness towards.
But if you consciously want to use it in outside practice with your friends and family, does that help, or how has metaphor helped your life since you got into this field
So
as in
I personally feel I make quick conversations.
okay.
Like with friends, I can make quick transformative conversations, and without
Okay.
letting them know that I'm actually counseling them. But
Mm-hmm.
the moment they say, like, somebody will call and say, I'm just like, a friend just called me last week and says, Kiki, this dagger that I feel in my chest, I don't know what to do with it. So the dagger is like a huge metaphor. So I'm like, oh
Right.
my, that must be really hurting, yeah. So she's saying, yeah. I said, okay, like this dagger, yeah. So what can we do about this dagger, and how do you think the dagger came about, and things like that. And I just started talking to her. So 5-10 minutes, she felt better, and I said that all that you can do is you have a choice to keep the dagger in there, keep yourself, or pull it out. The moment you're going to pull it out, it could be a little more painful, but then eventually it can't stay in there, right? It's got to get out, right? So she's like, yeah, it's got to get out. So she just felt better with that,
Yes. Yeah, that is actually a quick conversation. So,
Yeah.
in general, with respect to the other mental health care practitioners, since we're almost at the end of the session, um, can you share some insights or tips while using the metaphor with your current set, or in general, how to go about it? आपका,
So my
just sum it
general,
up.
yeah. So my general tip to all the people who are entering the field, or I'm just sharing an experience with them, that
Yeah.
most of the time, most of the time we all have to develop our niche style of working. And our
Yes.
niche style of working is going to come from our exposure to different therapeutic techniques.
Hmm.
So the more we, if we have a goal of becoming a good therapist, we got to feed the brain. And
Hmm.
we got to feed the brain every single day. You
Hmm.
got to feed it with fresh information. So never give up on learning. That's what I think. I'm still learning. I'm
Absolutely.
still learning.
Completely believe on
Yeah.
that.
So feed your brain with fresh information every day. Keep a lookout for learning. Keep on learning. And you never know, a bit from every kind of course may develop a unique style that is so individual to you. That till you don't
Yes.
find that unique style, just keep learning. That's what I tell all the students that I always come across, that never compromise on your learning quota. It's a vast field, and keep learning. The moment you say, okay, this is my style, you might be
Mhm.
limiting yourself because you have not yet added something more to it. So I guess continuous, consistent learning is what I
Mhm.
tell people all the time. So
Yes.
open yourself up and keep learning, because I get so many students who have done their masters, and they come with this whole notion that we need an internship. Okay, and
Mhm.
we have done our masters from this university and this university. Yet when I give them a little child and I tell them, all right, navigate the session, they're quite lost. So
Mhm.
practical counseling versus theoretical counseling, the difference is very huge.
There's a
So
gap.
all the students out there, I really want to tell them that although the university teachers that you all have had have told you that you all have learned everything in college and that you're ready, my experience to the Indian curriculum right now is quite on the contrary. I find our students who come out of MA Psych are not so ready. They need to be more explorative. They need to learn more. And that is what is missing link between our children who go out to practice and are looking for internships, and then they land up getting internships where they are either doing case history taking, or they are just doing psychometric test evaluation, or they are just handing out reports. The in session experience is something that
Mhm.
they don't really get,
Right.
which is what they are going to get in workshops, which is what they're going to get when they learn either from an organization like yours or other open organizations, where you're going to get practice and hands-on in-session experience. Imagine
Absolutely.
yourself looking at 20 different therapists working with
Mhm.
20 different clients in an in-session experience, which you're not going to get anywhere, right? So
True.
openness to learn. That's what my suggestion to everyone.
Absolutely. A very thoughtful point put across that keep learning. I think that's where you have your own, develop your own niche. And I
Yeah.
think it's time. Let's just check once if we have any question, and then before that we can wrap it up. So I think there's one question there, Kirti. During this pandemic, what metaphor can we use to treat stressed people?
What metaphor can we use to treat stressed people? So the
Yes.
only metaphors of hope,
Hmm.
you know, can go away. So what is in nature a metaphor of hope? The day and the night.
Yeah.
Okay. So no night lasts forever. So the day will come, the sun will rise, and the
Yes.
light will shed, and it will become beautiful once again. Until that time, what do you do in night? Now it's the night time. You have a choice. You can dance at night, you can sleep at night, you can relax at night, you can worry at night, you can fight at night. All these are the choices you have. But the hours of the night take you within yourself. And at that point of time, be within yourself. This is a time where we are being called upon to spend it like a night. So be within yourself, keep some self engagement, go within your own self, discover, and then just wait for the day to rise. And the day is surely coming, it's rising.
Yes. Hope is the the savior.
Hope is the savior. Hope is the savior.
So yes, lovely thing that we have had a very wonderful session, and I hope I had a wonderful session hosting Kirti. a very informative session, and hope you guys also had an informative, resourceful session. Yes, you can get in touch with her if you have any questions related to her, metaphor workshops and how you can get more knowledge about it. So I'd like to thank everybody who's been watching us, and thank you so much, Kirti, for coming,
Most
and
welcome.
thank you for your valuable time and inputs. And yes, I'm going to see you all tomorrow again at 4. And tomorrow's topic is psychoanalysis. So see you all tomorrow. Have a nice evening. Thank you, Kirti, once again. And I'm signing off. See you. Bye.
Bye bye. See you. Bye, Miss. Bye bye,
Bye bye.
everyone.